Welcome back to the Fourth Way Podcast. So in this episode, I want to take a short little excursus away from our season on simplicity, because there have been a number of things that I've talked about in the last couple episodes that have kind of pointed back to propaganda a little bit, and also because just with a lot of events that have been occurring, as well as with a gap that I recognized in the propaganda season, I want to make sure that I sort of set the record straight and don't leave people with false impressions after listening to the propaganda series. Especially if you go back, if you haven't listened to it before, but because of some of the things that we talked about, you decide to go back now. I want you to go back kind of with a little bit of a different understanding in mind as you start the series. So most of the way through the propaganda series, I focused a lot on the clumsiness of conspiracies. Throughout history, there have been a lot of attempts at conspiracies. There have been a lot of things that occurred, and what you end up finding out is that they're not really these long-term sorts of plans. A lot of conspiracies that are true ended up being on the smaller scale or the short term. I mean, if you think about it, like, how can you really have a full-fledged long-term conspiracy? Like, how you don't know how people are going to react. You don't know. There's so much you don't know. You can't plan people's responses. So the larger the scale is, and the more complex it is, it's very difficult to control. And so a lot of what I focused on was just kind of the bumbling nature of conspiracies. The one that comes to mind is with Chile, right? The overthrow there. Or if you look into the coup in Iran by the U.S. there as well, a lot of those things are just kind of, they don't have these master plans that they plan out. It's just kind of, they do one thing and then something happens and they respond a different way. And so it ends up that there are shady things that happen, but most of the time the government could barely even control one aspect of a conspiracy, let alone if it's a multi-staged conspiracy. So that's what a lot of the season ended up focusing on. However, when I got to the episode on the resurrection, whether or not that was a conspiracy, and I talked a little bit about that, that was almost all the way through the season. But when I talked about that, one of the things that I pointed to was I said that conspiracies are very difficult to maintain, because especially as you get to the big scale, like the governmental level, they're really hard to maintain because you have so many people involved. And that's one aspect of the conspiracy of Jesus. Like, was he resurrected or not? One of the pieces of evidence is that, well, you had 12 disciples plus hundreds of other people who claimed to see him. That's a lot of people. If they didn't really, you'd expect that somebody would break at some point, especially when you consider the other factors of there wasn't really any reward, especially at first, to claiming to follow Jesus. Later in the empire's history, there might have been something that you gain out of it, but for most people, there was nothing to gain out of it. And even for the disciples who were the leaders of the movement, they got pressure, right? They had the pressure of the state put on them. They ended up being persecuted for sticking to the claim that they saw Jesus resurrected. So you have, you need a benefit to have a conspiracy, some payoff. You need to have very little pressure. You need to have few conspirators because somebody's going to break. But when we got to that episode, it even happened like as I was going through it. I've usually got a script or some outline that I follow. But I think it was even as I was going through that, I sort of had this realization that I think I had conspiracy theories pegged a bit wrong. And now, a few years later, after I've finished that season, and after just, you've got big tech, big corporations, big government empires running rampant, AI and all the craziness there. Like as all of this power just unfolds in our world, I'm recognizing even more that realization that I had doing that episode, I think is more true than I thought even back then. Like back then it was kind of a just like a stone in my shoe. It was kind of bothering me. And now I'm like, you know what? I think I've got to call it that I was short-sighted. I don't think I was wrong about the propaganda stuff, and I don't think I was wrong about the way a lot of conspiracies have transpired. I think I was, I don't know if it was naive, or maybe it was just not wanting to be lumped as a conspiracy theorist, or just recognizing that there are a lot of really kooky people, and you've got all these weird things like flat Earth coming back and stuff. Like just there's some weird stuff with the conspiracy theory side of things. I mean, I know that the CIA like termed conspiracy theories, and that in and of itself is kind of a way to dismiss people. Like I understand that, but at the same time, I felt a little averse to embracing a stronger position on conspiracy theories. But now, I have to say that I think conspiracy theories, like some of them, are more reasonable than I did back then. And here's what kind of changed my mind on it. My realization was that, yes, if the government had conspiracy theories, if they engaged in a conspiracy theory, like some of these bigger ones, I don't know, JFK, Martin Luther King Jr., Charlie Kirk, like whatever, if they engaged in something, you'd have to have a bunch of people involved, more than 12, right? More than the number of disciples. And so, like, they couldn't all just keep their mouths shut. But my realization was that, yeah, but you have to factor in those other two aspects, right? Is the reward worth it? And is there going to be enough pressure? And as you think about those things, for whatever governments are trying to control in the world, the price is worth it, right? Oligarchies and political power, and I mean, look at people who go into Congress and how rich they come out, right? Yeah, of course it's worth it. They've got so much invested in it. They don't want that to fall apart. So yeah, you could have a lot of people involved in a conspiracy if the payout's really big. But secondly, and this is the biggest thing, because even when payouts are really big, like bank robbers or something, even when the payouts are really big, pressure is probably the biggest aspect here, right? It doesn't matter how many conspirators there are. It's the amount of pressure that's placed on it. Because you can have a huge payout, but if you're like, I robbed a bank, but I know that the police are going to find me out and arrest me, then I'm going to do what's best for me, and I'm going to rat out the other guys so that hopefully I get less of a sentence, because I know that my chances of enjoying that money that I stole are low since the police have put so much pressure on me. So when you think about the pressure that is placed on the government, now we quoted, I think it was David Hume, and before leading the people, he has to lead his Praetorian Guard or something like that, where he's essentially saying that governments rest on the wills of the people, right? Because the people are more numerous than the Praetorian Guard, and if we can push back, like, we're really where the power lies. The thing is, like, right now, before, like, there's no revolution or anything at this point in time, but right now, the government has no power placed on them, or no pressure placed on them. Okay, we vote, but we're really voting for there are Republicans and Democrats. They're all essentially the same. Yes, there are some policy differences, but they're pretty minuscule. Like, they all run in the same crowds. They are all tied to the same corporations and to the same donors and lobbies. Like, they're all the same. we don't pressure them. The oligarchy, the technocracy, right? Big tech, big industries, they control them, right? They're the ones who put the pressure on them. They can survive if I don't vote, and I don't. They can survive if I don't vote, if I don't support them. They can't survive. They can't advertise if big tech and big pharma and big business don't support them. So there's no pressure on the government. Like, how long have the JFK files been sealed? Okay, Trump just released some a little bit ago, but a lot of them are still sealed, or what is it? Not extracted, redacted, right? They've got no pressure on them. So what is going to, if they're getting huge benefits out of it, even if there are 1,000 people involved in any given conspiracy, what would their motivation be to give up any information? They'd lose all that power. They'd lose power and wealth and all that stuff. They just keep their mouth shut because there's no pressure on them. Okay, people demand that they want the Epstein files released. Okay, they just don't release them. What are we going to do about it? We're not going to do anything. So maybe one day, if there's ever a revolution, then it'll matter. But at this point, there's no real pressure placed on the governments. And not to mention, another realization that I had was that there are multiple types of pressures, right? So if you're the government and you engage in some conspiracy, you foment some coup, whatever it is that you do, there might be some pressure from the people. Maybe you feel like, I don't know, my election might be a little bit more up in the air if the people are upset. Okay, great. That's some external pressure from the people. But what about the internal pressure that you're facing from oligarchs, from politicians, from people who actually have power to touch you? That they can touch you and your family. Think of the mafia, right? The mafia, there are a lot of people involved in conspiracies, crimes, whatever, who keep their mouth shut pretty well a lot of the time, unless there's some big, huge bust that the police undergo. And even then, a lot of times they keep their mouth shut because they know if they don't, they're dead. There's more internal pressure inside the mafia than there is external pressure. I'd rather go to prison than rat people out because I know what happens to rats. Well, same thing, mafia, government, no difference. Just one can call what they do legal. And they have more means to hide it, and power from the outside can touch them even less than the mafia. So that lack of pressure, just like the absolute powerlessness of outside pressure to touch those in government, I think has helped me to understand that conspiracy theories are far more feasible than I thought they would. Not the blundering conspiracy theories that just kind of unravel and end up being more cover-ups than planned conspiracies. I think that conspiracy theories like the execution of Martin Luther King Jr., very similar things that happened with Charlie Kirk and Martin Luther King Jr. They revamped the landscape, the supposed bushes where there was a shooter behind, within, 24 hours or days of his shooting. The way that they went about the investigation, there's just, right? The government has the power to do that kind of stuff. They don't know how people are going to react. Right? When Martin Luther King Jr. was killed, okay, they didn't know how the people were going to respond, but they needed to do that thing, or it was convenient for that thing to have happened for him to be killed. So in the end, I don't know. I don't even know what my conclusion is on this, because I can't tell you what specific conspiracy theories I think would be true and what are not. And I know it's a really nebulous place to be thinking about not being able to know. It's not having confidence in what is true and what is not. I get that. But I think it's important to recognize this gaping hole that I had, and I don't want to give the impression that there aren't any very nefarious things that could be going on or that have happened, because I think they have. Which ones of those? I don't know. Right? You can get really weird. I mean, people talk about JFK, Martin Luther King Jr., the moon landing was fake, the Earth is flat, on 9/11, the towers and Building 7 and the Pentagon, it was really a missile, and like you can go all over the place, and you could just deconstruct everything. And that's not what I'm necessarily advocating. Just know that there are people, there are groups who have extreme power, who have no pressure, external pressure placed on them. They have a lot of internal pressure to keep their mouth shut. And I think what we're seeing come out of what's true about Israel, like what they did with the pagers in Gaza, like the exploding pagers that they had rigged, what Mossad is saying about their global spy network and their ability, like they have electronics all over the world in every country that are rigged in some way, like to spy or whatever they can do. And that's just one small country. People have a large reach. I mean, I just think of all of the different capabilities and these are only the ones that we know of, right? We know that cloning has existed for a while now and is getting better. We know that they can create synthetic life now. We know that nanotechnology, nanobots and things. We know that they can, their understanding of biological components to, make biological weapons and diseases and viruses. We know that that's off the charts. We know that their ability to, mess with technology and infiltrate technology is just beyond what we can even comprehend. The capabilities of empires today and businesses, big tech, are just insane. And so without that pressure, with the huge rewards that they're reaping, it doesn't really matter that there are a lot of conspirators. I think that we are in a really dark place, and it is hard to know what's true. And I didn't want to give the false impression that everything that's really scary and really big and really conspiratorial is false. So hopefully this corrects that, and hopefully you can enjoy the propaganda season.
That's all for now. So peace, and because I'm a pacifist, when I say it, I mean it. This podcast is a part of the Kingdom Outpost Network. Please check out the links below to find other great podcasts and content related to nonviolence and kingdom living.